Well, they asked me to talk today about why white workers should fight racism. And it seemed like it's almost funny to say it and people should understand it at this point in the world. But it isn't that funny. And it's not just to be a nice guy because it's a good thing to do. But all across our country, a big battle is raging. We can see that the Tea Party of the 1% has declared war on the 99%, on all of us, as far as our living standards go, as far as the cost of food, rent, gas, oil, insurance, clothes, which they say there's no inflation, as far as wages, union contracts, pensions, Social Security, cuts in public education, and other social programs. We are all under the attack from the legislative outfits like ALEC that spend $6 million a year, contributed by monopoly corporations, to finance union-busting campaigns, break union wage scales, privatize pensions, privatize Social Security, repress voter registration, and even roll back civil rights registration. For many years, I worked as a form builder in construction, most of my life. And in those days, we used to be called the aristocracy of labor. Well, I guess we were skilled, we made good wages. Never mind that people got injured or died on every job I worked on. Never mind that we were out of work about 2 months a year in the cold weather. Never mind that it was only possible to work a limited number of years before your body gave out working outside in bad weather. And we also had unspoken and sometimes open color lines in many of the trades and locals. Many of the locals were dominated by thugs that only gave steady work to a small clique of people, of their cronies. In my local, when a rank-and-file coalition tried to run an integrated slate of younger workers who stood for union democracy and fair distribution of jobs to all, they were threatened at gunpoint at their homes, and eventually my local was taken over by the International and dissolved because they could not beat the unity of black, white, and brown workers who kept winning the election. Well, I don't want to go into some of the rough stuff that happened back in those days, but a lot of that has changed. The color line is by and large down in construction. The building trades are integrated, and guess what? There is no more aristocracy of labor because the building trades are under relentless attack by the builders and real estate developers who were given free rein under Giuliani and Bloomberg to bust union wages, scales, and pensions, and to start building non-union, eliminating union jobs. They also built housing only for the rich and started taking away public spaces that had been part of our communities. Well, union workers, black, white, and brown, are in a battle for their lives. If you do not unite and fight back, we're all going down the drain. Some locals in the trades and the laborers' union in general have understood that and are beginning to give leadership to unite with community forces to fight for workers' rights and community needs. But we need a lot more of it. I still have people in my family working in the trades, and many of them are still very confused by a new problem that has been brought up, and it's really a very old problem. Most of them understand that we have to unite to maintain our public school. My grandchildren go to public school. Sure as hell are not going to go to any private school for $40,000 a head. But meanwhile, our public schools are under attack. The teachers are demonized, funds are cut, class sizes are overloaded. While hedge fund managers pour millions, they spend $5 million in 3 weeks to counter de Blasio's pre-K, to privatize public schools and Social Security. Well, we know our kids can't afford private schools. Can white workers maintain living wages as unions are cut out of new contracts and we all scramble for the less jobs, jobs that are there? Hell no, there's no way to defend that as white workers. Our white workers are going nowhere fast unless they are part of a united fight back. And most people I talk to understand that. But there's one big problem. We all know about racism. It's about 600 years old in this country, or old, I don't know how old the country is. But everybody was saying, oh, racism is a thing of the past. We elected an Afro-American president. Well, this thing does not pass the smell test. It smells the same way as racism does, and it's being trotted out in many of the white communities. You have the whole policy of broken window policing, the militarizing of the police forces, the senseless killing of black men and women, and some white people, and the sending out of SWAT teams for selling loose cigarettes. This is the modern guise of racism. But it is also the beginning of the control and occupation of all our communities as the stuff begins to hit the fan. That's why the call of Richard Trumka, head of the AFL-CIO, during the Ferguson demonstrations for all union families to stand against police violence should become a rallying cry for all of us. We must publicly reject and rebuke the open face of racism that Lynch of the Sergeants Union represents. We must find ways of uniting the mass actions in the streets and the union action on the job more closely with the elected officials like de Blasio, the Progressive Caucus and City Council, and our guest speaker, Ras Baraka, who stand against racism for union jobs with justice and a living wage. In manufacturing and service jobs, the picture is no better for all workers, white, black, brown, men and women. Transnational monopolies, trade deals like NAFTA have shipped good union jobs out of the country to areas of super exploitation, slave labor. Putting to work is all in a race to the bottom. The fight to organize low-wage workers is the tip of the iceberg of the defense against the attack of the 1% on all of us. In the face of that attack, the organization of the poorest, most oppressed workers and their communities is a key battle. When we consider that 3 out of every 5 new jobs since the 2008 turnaround are low-wage, non-union, that Walmart, with 1.3 million workers, half of whom are part-time, is the single biggest employer in the United States, that fast food workers earning starvation wages make up the workforce of some of the biggest monopolies, corporations in all of our cities, including McDonald's, KFC, and Domino's, we can understand why the fight is on the front line of the people's agenda in the fight back. Right now, they have no unions, no union protection or contracts. Many are part-time and don't get benefits or labor law protection, and they are open to all kinds of retaliation for attempting to organize. By the way, Walmart's recent announcement that they would raise wages from 9 to 10% for their part-time workers still leaves them well below the poverty level. And not only that, the retail association that they are part of just was praising them so much for stepping up into progress, and they say now it's no longer necessary to have legislation to give us a minimum living wage. Well, that's bull. What is really needed is 15 and a union, just like fast food prohibition. Seattle and San Francisco have shown the way. If New York follows, with our huge population and workforce, with a huge boost it would give to the purchasing power of poor people in all of our communities, it would be enormous. It would be monumental for the whole country, and it can be done. But they can't win their fight without worker community support committees and efforts. Here again, we see a need for grassroots action and organization to press for and support elected officials who back a people's agenda. This April 15th, there will be another national strike of fast food workers. All of us here, Fast Food Forward here and the whole national coalition, all of us here should do whatever we can in our unions, communities, churches, and with local and elected officials to get support for the demand for 15 in a union and to support and participate in the action. Maybe this annual formation of hosts for We Won't Go Back could do something to make itself more permanent and help give orientation to these kind of demands and act as a coalition that pull together forces in the city so we're no longer fighting united and get disunited and get picked off one by one. Because united, we will win.